Cool. Oh, this is fun. Okay. So in this episode, they have, you can kind of see there's these little like circle things that have wings. They're called like breezes, right? And so these little animals, they come, and no one knows where they come from. And it's kind of weird to have it right after this one. But so they come into town, and they just kind of start flying around. Everyone likes them at the beginning. They look really, cute. They're small. They're happy, and they're harmless is what people think at the beginning, which is not true. So a couple of them come in, and everyone's super happy. They're like, "Whoa, that's so cool! Yeah, let's have fun with these guys." And so they stay for the night, and then the next day, all of a sudden they eat some food and they start to multiply. And after a couple of days, these guys multiply so quickly that they're everywhere. I mean, there's hundreds, thousands of them. They've like overtaken the entire town, and these guys walk out of their homes, and there's basically like a parasite invasion of the whole town. Which is not good, and they're just eating like all the food that like everywhere. There's just like no food left. They're just eating everything, and this happens so often. Like you have this outside force, and at the beginning, it doesn't look like a big deal. At the beginning, you give it a chance, and you think it's not gonna matter, and you instead of taking in pain like in the last one, right? You're taking in pain. With this, is a little bit different. Like this was happiness. These guys brought in joy. And so because they made people feel good, the town let them grow. The town let them stay. And as they stayed, they multiplied to become, a much larger problem. And, eventually, they only have, so much food. And these guys, they're eating like all the food. And so there's a legit problem because they're going to starve to death if these guys keep multiplying and eating all their food. So what Twilight does, and what the main six do, and what their friends do, is they come together and they say, look, we got a problem here. At the beginning, it wasn't a huge deal. At the beginning, these guys were just trying to do their own thing. We were letting them in. They were having a good time with us. But now, they're everywhere, and they're eating everything. And so what they do is they sort of try to take a shortcut and get rid of all of them at once using magic. And so often the shortcut way, and we'll kind of look at it, but the goal is like they're going to cast a spell, and all of a sudden all of these little creatures are going to just stop eating. They're not going to eat food anymore, and if they don't eat food anymore, it's not going to affect all the food, and then they'll be fine. They'll just be around, but they won't eat food, and they won't multiply anymore. They won't grow anymore, and have like more and more little kids or whatever. So they launch this shortcut. They launch this spell, and they cast it over the whole town. And at first they're happy with it. It looks good, and so often it looks good when you implement the shortcut, when you implement the little cheat that's going to get you there at the beginning. And then they start to have a pretty big problem. So the problem is, like, instead of eating food now, they just start to like eat buildings and like fences. They just eat objects. And so they go through, and instead of eating all the food, now they're just like destroying the town by eating like all the architecture, all the buildings. Everything is just crushed because they tried to take it fast with this simple way that they thought would end it all now. Actually made it worse for them in the future. Actually destroyed their growth, destroyed their opportunity, all because of taking what they thought was like the easy way out. And that easy way was not easy whatsoever. So now I'm starting out like an asset management, right? I tried to take like a shortcut here with the way I was getting money into the accounts and portfolios going. And so because of that, I tried to get everything in super quickly, and it like froze all my accounts, and I wasn't able to access anything. Like everything broke, and nothing like worked. Just like with this situation here, you have basically the entire town is just in chaos. Everything's destroyed because they try to take this shortcut. And it's the same thing, right? The only way to really solve the problem is to go through the longer solution. Sometimes the longer solution, it's not easy, but you just have to go through the process and do the work to make it happen. And that's really exactly what happens here. So they realize that this is very, very, very bad, and they have to figure out a way to actually round all of the little insects up together so that they'll leave town organically, and they'll go somewhere else, and they'll be natural instead of manipulating nature and changing the way that these guys fundamentally eat and function as an animal. They have to go through the process of collecting them together and taking them into a new world, taking them into a new environment, so that they can go and live somewhere else and just eat somewhere else, instead of infesting the entire town. And so what they do is they get a bunch of instruments, tons of music, and they start to play this cool trance song. And it was harder for sure, but one by one, these creatures, they start to go away from the town, stop eating everything, and come into this huge line of people that they're just following Pinkie Pie. She's playing a bunch of instruments, and leading them all on this path. And they get every single one of them in a row, in a trance. You see this so much with nature and with animals, this idea that if you can get just a couple of these people at the beginning to start following a pattern, start following a leader, then all the rest will come after, right? And so it's just this initial work to get some of these guys going, and then it's a lot easier to compound and grow and succeed, to get the whole rest of these pests following Pinkie. And so that's pretty much exactly what happens. And she walks them out of town, playing this huge instrument thing attached to her body. And the biggest reason that it works and that they actually get all these animals out of town, out of the situation, is because she put in the work, because she put in the effort to make it happen, and then it paid off, right? So with this situation in asset management, I had to set up probably 6-7 different brokerage accounts to get all of this cash flowing. And at the beginning, it's difficult because you have to get all of the statements, all of the documentation, the tax requirements in place. And so the initial part, the beginning, it's very tough to do. But once you get over sort of that initial hurdle, it's much easier to get the rest of the project done. And that's what happens, right? Is, once you get that first account open, next one comes, because it's all the same information. It's all the same work that you did, the same instruments that you used to get the first few. It's the same for the rest of them. So you can put just a little bit more effort into your relationships, a little bit more effort into your work, development, your expertise at the beginning. So you have 80% of the growth here. You get that last 20%. It's much easier, and all you have to do is get it done at the beginning, so that specifically here, everything was set in place, and they were able to get everyone else out of town and succeed in essentially getting rid of all these creatures without using the shortcut, which crushed their success initially. Make sense? Sound cool? All right, awesome. So here's this one's actually pretty cool. So there's a new event that's in town, and it's after this, and essentially the seasons don't really change. So because the seasons don't change, the ponies, they have to change the weather by themselves. And so this is the end of winter and the beginning of spring. And what's interesting is usually you have the Earth ponies and the Pegasus and the unicorns. They all have sort of their specific jobs that they do. They have their roles. They have their purposes in the town. And so when a wrap-up comes, they just do their thing, and they've been doing it for years and years and years and years. But since Twilight is new, she has no clue. She doesn't have a role. She doesn't have a purpose. And so she's very, very confused with what she should do to actually be part of this community and clean up winter. And what I want to share with you is there's a song for this episode, and music is so powerful because what it does is it takes words and it takes thoughts and it emotionalizes them and it gives them reality. And so we're going to go through some of the most impactful songs from the show because it's so hard to express sort of the emotion that comes from music, that comes from this emotionalized thought that vibrates at a much higher energy and therefore has a much greater impact. So let's go through this real quick.
3 months of winter coolness and awesome holidays.
We've kept our hoofsies warm at home, time off from work to play.
But the food we've stored is running out and we can't grow in this cold. And even though I love my boots, this fashion's getting old. The time has come to welcome spring and all things warm and green. But it's also time to say goodbye. It's winter, we must clean. How can I help? I'm new, you see. What does every pony do? How do I fit in without magic? I haven't got a clue. Winter wrap up, let's finish our holiday cheer. Winter wrap up, 'cause tomorrow spring is here. 'Cause tomorrow spring is here. Bringing home the southern birds, a Pegasus job begins, and clearing all the gloomy skies to let the sun shine in. We move the clouds and we melt the white snow. When the sun comes up, it's warmth and beauty will glow. Winter wrap up, let's finish our holiday cheer. Winter wrap up, 'cause tomorrow spring is here. Winter wrap up, 'cause tomorrow spring is here. 'Cause tomorrow spring is here. Little critters hibernate under the snow and ice.
We wake up all their sleepy heads so quietly and nice.
We help them gather up their food, fix their homes below.
We welcome back the southern birds so their families can grow.
Winter wrap up, let's finish our holiday cheer. Winter wrap up, 'cause tomorrow spring is here. Winter wrap up, 'cause tomorrow spring is here. 'Cause tomorrow spring is here. No easy task to clear the ground, plant our tiny seeds with proper care and sunshine. Everyone it feeds. Apples, carrots, celery stalks, colorful flowers too. We must work so very hard, it's just so much to do. Winter wrap up, let's finish our holiday cheer. Winter wrap up, 'cause tomorrow spring is here. Winter wrap up, 'cause tomorrow spring is here. 'Cause tomorrow spring is here. Now that I know what they all do, I have to find my place and help with all of my heart. Tough task ahead I face. How will I do without my magic? Help the earth pony way. I wanna belong, so I must do my best today. Do my best today. Winter wrap up, let's finish our holiday cheer. Winter wrap up, 'cause tomorrow spring is here. Winter wrap up, 'cause tomorrow spring is here. 'Cause tomorrow spring is here. 'Cause tomorrow spring is here.
Woo! All right, sweet. So, whatever. It doesn't matter. So she's like totally isolated. So remember, she's coming from Camelot, and in Camelot, she was mentored under Celestia as like the leader of this world, and she's like so used to being elevated above everybody else. So when there's like Earth ponies, there's Pegasus, unicorns, like she is so isolated. She has no clue where she should be as an individual because she has always been separated from society. And so you see like this character conflict. She doesn't know where to fit in. She doesn't know how to get into this social group because there's not like, for so many people, this idea of where they should be socially comes from, their group identity. And for, at least here, like the groups, there's 3 main groups, but she doesn't really fit into those groups. Just the way that she lives, the way that she functions, everything about her kind of separates her, especially as a newcomer into this town where there's like never new people. She is so isolated that she doesn't know where to go. And you can see like she's struggling with it. And so what has to happen is you've got to power through and figure out where your unique ability is. So remember, with Celestia as like the leader of the world, basically, she's been learning all these leadership skills and how to use magic to lead, and she's like insanely good at organizing, planning, and magic. And so for her to use her insanely strong powers to, like, move clouds or take animals out or move ice, she tries all these things, but she's just terrible at them. She can't really ice skate. I mean, she can't fly, and she's just not very helpful with most of the other ponies in town. And so she's got to figure out, like, what works for her. And for her, what she realizes is that it's not the traditional status quo. It's not what most people are doing. She has to actually break away from society into her own special blue ocean over here. And this is so important, especially if you look at like what your startup does, your company does, or what you do with your job. You've got to kind of break away from what masses of people are doing here, masses of people are doing here, masses of people are doing here, and to create a true value, create insanely high amounts of individualized worth. You go on this lonely path temporarily. At the beginning, it's tough, it's lonely, and she doesn't know what's going on. But then this end goal, if she can get to a position that truly fits her personality and matches what she wants to do with her life, she'll be so much happier, and she'll have such a greater elevated state. And that comes from her ability to go through this process right here. So this process, it's not easy, but if you can get to this end goal, it's going to be worth so much more than if she just did like some ordinary normal job. And that's exactly what she does for the rest of the episode. Is she goes through, she goes and goes and goes. She realizes that her ability is to organize. Her ability is to be the center point of operations, and it stemmed from her background in it, and she does it very, very well. So she doesn't fit into a traditional status quo, but instead she becomes leader. She becomes an out performer. And so often you'll see like a bucket of crabs, right? If you have a bucket of crabs and there's one crab trying to crawl out, you see all these other crabs down here. They'll pull this guy who's trying to climb out back down because they don't want him to escape. So you don't even have to put a lid on here. Like these crabs, they will just pull the crabs down when they come out. So this is not an easy path to go through, because for so many people, like the social stigma, most of these people are going to try to pull her down when she tries to escape. But when she breaks out and she separates herself from the vast majority of what other people are doing, all of a sudden she's way over here, and she creates her own little special role as like the organizer and the planner for the transfer from fall to winter, or from fall or winter to spring, right? So the mayor comes in and she gets, they have like little vests on for what they did. She gets her own special vest. It's got like all the things on it that no one else has, that says she's the leader and she's the planner and she's the organizer for the whole seasonal transition. And that's exactly what she does. She's the only person who's ever done this. And it's because she created her own position in the marketplace, in the workforce, by doing her own thing and exceeding in her own way that was unique, and it was her. And because of that, she was able to focus on her unique ability and bring significantly more value to this event by leading it, all by completely rejecting what wasn't working and focusing exclusively on what was. So remember, like, the key takeaway from here is to work to elevate yourself to this position here where you can work on your unique ability and what you're best at. And as soon as you can do that, you're going to be able to exponentially increase the results and the returns that you bring into the marketplace. So cool. All right, next one, you got introduce some new characters here, and then we learn about some of their backgrounds for school and then the growth they have. So this is Apple Bloom, and she's Applejack's younger sister. And so the way it works basically is the young ponies, the kids, whatever, they don't have what's called a cutie mark, right? So you can kind of see on all the normal ponies, on their like butts, they have like this like mark, and so when they're young they don't have that mark, and then they figure out what it is that they want to do with their lives, and then that mark like magically appears, and then they have like a cutie mark on them, which is, it's whatever, right? But it's like symbolic of them figuring out what they want to do with their lives, and for the young kids, for Apple Bloom, like this is a big deal. And she wants like to get her cutie mark, she can figure out what she wants to do with her life, but more importantly, have like the internal fulfillment of having this cutie mark. So she's got this goal, and this goal is up here, and this goal is dragging her, it's pulling her towards it because she has a very, very, very definite goal. Like it's not, vague. She knows exactly what she wants. But it's really far up. She's all the way down here, and it's a long journey to get there. But that goal is there, and so it's so important when you're starting out, with anything, to really, she spent probably 6 months really, really, really going hard on figuring out exactly what this goal was. And once you figure out what the goal is, it's much, much, much easier to get there. It's like so much easier to get there. I remember I was writing my first book, I knew exactly what I wanted that book to look like a year before I started it. And, that goal there will pull you towards it, give you a path to go towards it. So with Call the Cutie, it's the same thing. She's starting this process. She's going on the first leg of this mission to get to this end result right here. She knows what she wants, and so all she has to do now is take that goal and start turning it into a reality. So what she does is she breaks. So obviously this is very far away. She takes the next logical step. So she break it down step by step by step by step by step by step by step. What's the next logical thing that you can do to have this, to get to this goal, to have this growth? What makes sense now to break into this future area? So you take, your 1 year goal is here, 5 years here. You have a decade-long goal. You've put everything you have into creating this decade-long goal, and then you break it down into a 5-year goal, into a 2-year goal, 1-year goal, into a 1 month goal, 1 week goal, 1 day goal. What can you do right now to get this done? And that's really what we see going on in this episode is she's focusing on this growth. She's focusing on this development. She knows where she wants to go. She's taking the path to it. So she goes around and basically she tries a bunch of sort of new different things. To get a cutie mark, basically you just kind of do a lot of things until you figure out what you love to do and what works for you. And that's true for so many things. I'm really into trading stocks, right? But when I was growing up, I had no clue. And so to get to that point, you go through a ton of periods of just trying random things that you think are going to be cool and cool things to do for the rest of your life. You just try it. You just try it over and over and over again. Sports, video games, whatever you want to try. Music production. I used to be huge into music production. Just try different things over and over and over. And that's exactly what she's doing. She just keeps trying new things and putting herself in new situations so that she can figure out what she really loves to do for the rest of her life. Because that's what this is, right? This is an image of what she wants to do. All of a sudden, you have a passion that you can pursue. And this is how you develop passion. It's just by going through this process over and over again. Try a new thing, see if it works. If it doesn't work, try a new thing, see if it works. This is a concept that's developed so much by Ray Dalio in his book Principles. This idea that you're just going up and up and up, and you might have downfalls temporarily, but your long-term progression is more and more and more and more. And you can apply it to so many things, but it's really, really useful when you're applying it to this idea of finding your passion, finding your purpose, which is exactly what Apple Bloom's trying to do here. Because for her, she's doing this over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And there are temporary setbacks, right? Huge fall, huge fall, huge fall, huge fall. And she tries so many things that just don't actually get her anywhere to her. That's what it looks like. But in reality, you're growing over time. You're even though you're falling, it's lower lows, or higher lows, right? So higher lows means that it might feel bad temporarily based on comparing where you used to be with where you currently are. But if you step back and really look at it, you're growing so much over time because of your ability to focus and do and just take action. Because as soon as you take action on something, you start to progress up this curve. It doesn't matter how high you get before you have some kind of setback. Because going up the process, right? Like this curve right here is just a bunch of these over and over and over again. This idea that just push really, really hard on one of these things at a time, and you're going to have that success that you want to realize. And it just is the same process over and over. You just got to go through the motion. And that's exactly what she does. She just keeps doing like random things over and over and over again throughout this episode, going through the process and trying to figure out what she loves to do and what will get her cutie mark and, you know, make an image appear on her butt so that she feels significant. See how they kind of have like pictures. That's what she's trying to go for, because it like symbolizes what their entire lives are based around. Okay, so remember in a couple episodes, these guys, they were a little bit pissed off at each other at the big party at Twilight's house. So Applejack on the right in orange and Rainbow Dash in blue. And now they're coming back together and they say, hey, you know what? There's a fair that came to town, right? And so this fair, this festival that they're doing, they have like a bunch of sporty competitions. And so Applejack's like totally not doing it with Rarity, and so instead she finds Rainbow Dash. And what's cool is like Rainbow Dash is like super athletic and really into, you know, sports, just like Applejack is. So what they do is they find, so here's like the whole group, right? Like you got the main six, and we saw earlier like how conflicts can kind of separate people. But now what's really cool is we're focusing on how similarities can bring them together. And by strengthening this relationship, you strengthen the whole group, right? It's this cross-sequence effect. So what's cool, let's see. So there's like this huge race that they do. And, this is fun. So at the beginning of the race, it's they want to knock down all the leaves on the trees, right? So there's trees everywhere throughout the town. And so the goal of this race is they, you know, kind of shake the ground and all these leaves fall off. So they're like, I don't know, probably 10, 15 people, and they all line up for this huge race. And, you know, mayor comes, everyone comes together, there's a huge crowd, and it's a pretty important, you know, social event. It's got huge significance to the town, to the environment, to the community, because this is that transition again into spring. And so they want to knock over all the leaves and get everything going. So Mayor fires the starting gun, and everyone starts running through the forest, right? And what's interesting is Applejack and Rainbow Dash, like they're friends, right? But they're super competitive. And as they start off this episode, they're doing a bunch of like, you know, smaller competitions, smaller kind of farm work, very, very basic just work that they're doing together, and they're competing, like constantly competing with one another to get it done, you know, better, right, and faster or whatever, so that they win. You know, they one up each other and they get to whatever level of success that they want by, you know, beating the other person. And it's this idea of like, you know, you can have the tallest building in the city by building the tallest building, or just knocking down the tallest building, and then you're the tallest building. And that's kind of what these two are doing right now, is they don't really want to build their buildings any higher. They don't want to build their egos, their worths, their confidence anywhere. And instead, they're just kind of competing to knock down the other person and to bump themselves up just a little bit by cutting off the victory, right? By defeating each other. And so their friendship, you know, it's challenged by them fighting, them going against one another to bump themselves up temporarily and temporarily kind of boost their significance, boost their ego, instead of focusing on overall long-term growth, right? So they're sacrificing overall growth so they can increase their egos, increase their sense of significance immediately instead of the benefit of the whole group. So how does this work out? Well, they go through the race, they go through the forest, and they want to win so bad that basically, you know, there's like a fork in the road, and there's like a hill everywhere, And earlier in the episode, they'd been working on the farm together, and they were growing and just competing on some very, very basic things. Here it's a little bit more serious, right? There's like a whole crowd watching. So Applejack gets ahead, and like she twists the sign for the race. It says go this way, so that you follow the course, right? She flips it, and she says go this, and she passes the sign and flips it, so that Rainbow Dash goes that way, and then goes up this hill to the middle of nowhere. And I mean, she gets pissed by this because basically she got like told to go the wrong way, and now she's like super far behind in the race, which like sucks. So she gets here and she realizes, hey, look, my friend kind of betrayed me a little bit, cheated, flipped the sign, told me to go the wrong way. She was misguided. She was pushed away from what should have been, which is just kind of like ridiculous, right? But for her, this was like the change. This was the flipping point where she realized that like she's going to get dirty. So Applejack's going through the race, and obviously there's like a ton of other people going through this race, and they just want to knock down all the leaves in the tree. And so Rainbow is like pissed, right? And so she comes up and tries to like trip everybody. There's like this huge log that gets like thrown onto the course to try to trip Applejack and mess up her racing, so that she can cross the finish line first. And she's so focused on winning this race, getting to the finish line before her friend so that she can win the competition, that she completely overlooks the safety of the racers and the point of this event. And so she just like flies to the end of this, right? Crushes the path for everybody else, destroys, this is like supposed to be a fun race. It crushes their event for them and destroys their ability to do what they want to do, which is knock down all these leaves, just so that she can one-up her friend and win this race. And so it crushes, not only like her positioning and her development, her growth, but it also just destroys like literally everybody's day, because everyone was here for this one race. And it's just ruined because of this feud, because of this like ridiculous competition of who's better, who's going to win. And so she gets to the end of the race, so she wins, right? She wins, beats everybody by cheating pretty much. And I mean, you guys know, like, cheating, not the goal. Bad stuff. But she doesn't care. She gets to the end. And what she realizes is that, yes, she won, and she got the medal. But what like mattered was that all these trees had their leaves knocked down. And because she cheated and knocked everything over and kind of stalled the race for everybody else, like none of the trees like lost any of their leaves. And so even though she won the race and got through the whole course, because of the rage that came from her betrayal, because of the anger that stemmed into her life, solely based on really like fundamentally winning, none of these leaves are knocked down, right? And so she has to go back, and they both go back, and they have to do the entire thing again, much slower, so they can actually knock the stuff down, and just tramp down all these trees and knock all these leaves down one by one by one. It takes forever. And it's all because they were just focused more on like this competition than the purpose, than the goal. Because the real goal was to get it done. And so because they didn't get it done on the first try, they had to go back and do it another time. And it took forever the second time. So, like, what makes sense here, right? What's the takeaway? Like, do it right the first time and focus on the goal instead of, like, short-term individual ego boost, winning. So you can take that temporary sacrifice, right? Just sacrifice that feeling of significance that comes from crossing that finish line first and focus on actually getting the job done. It makes such a larger impact on the community and on the work that they're doing, because everything actually gets done. Like if you do it right the first time and you're proud of your work, the first time, then you get to move on to the next event, do the next thing in your life and have this growth curve that only comes when you play fair and you do it right. Don't cut the shortcuts, because every single time you do, you see it so much in media. Like anyone that tries to take that shortcut, it's going to mess up the growth. It's going to mess up. And if it messes up, you got to do it again. You don't want to do it again. Just not the goal, not the purpose of where you're at. And so that's why you just got to focus. Big picture, cut this competition, take that self-sacrifice, and be willing to just focus on what makes sense for the common good. You see this like in the prisoner's dilemma, this idea of, if I rat this guy out, he'll go to jail for 10 years and I'll go to jail for 1 year. But if they both rat each other out, we're both going to go to jail for 40 years or whatever. But if neither of us rat each other out, we'll go to jail for 5 years. Like the idea that like it's better for everybody if you just focus on like the right decision, which is to stay truthful to each other. But there's this temptation of, I can have personal gain if I cheat or if I do the wrong thing, the wrong thing. And what the problem happens when both people cheat, it's the worst outcome for everybody. Just this prisoner's dilemma that you see so often. And so that's why you want to build a strong group of friends that are going to make the right decision, that are going to stay true to what needs to get done and have like the best outcome for everybody. Okay, he who can do this has the whole world with him. He who cannot walks a lonely way. This is like so huge. And it all starts with, this, like I learned this idea and like it just changed everything with the way I interact with people, the way I talk to people, and the way people like remember me and look at me. It's just, oh my God, it's huge. And it'll change everything. Names, okay? The most important word to any person on this planet is their name. Like, and nothing else is like, you can be in a busy airport running down to get to your flight, and there are like people everywhere, and you're like ridiculously distracted. Someone screams your name, you're gonna look like right at them. Names are so powerful. And so because people care so much about their own name, all of a sudden, like if you can learn someone's name, so like learn people's names, right? Learn names. And more importantly, use names, right? So if you want to get someone's attention, use their name. Makes them feel significantly better about themselves. It gives them a feeling that, look, this person thinks I'm worth something. They think I'm valuable. They actually care about me because they took the time to remember my name. You look at some of the most successful people on this planet, in politics and in any kind of social job, like FDR, right? Knew 50,000 names. You could meet someone 1 year, see them a year later, and you would know their name. Learning names, it changes everything. Makes people connect with you so much better and care about you. If you can just find someone that you're really, really trying to connect with, or maybe like if you meet somebody new, you remember their name and you call them by their first name, you'll see like people will treat you better when you call them by their first name. A great example of this, I call like all of the people in the lunchroom or at the West Village, whatever, by their first name. And it's just, I'm treated so significantly better than everyone else. It's ridiculous. Like they will stop and like scream, hey to me, like all the time. And it's just, it totally separates you from everybody else by a mile. Because if you can remember someone's name and smile at them, and remember names, you're going to be light years ahead of literally everybody else. It's huge. It's so big. And we start to see it applied in Suited for Success.